What's up guys, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about a topic which comes up a lot in my videos. Lots of Americans, lots of Yanks always comment on my videos asking questions about comparisons between American and Russian culture, and one thing they always ask me is about the tipping culture here in Russia. I know it's a really big part of culture over in the USA. It's highly discussed, it's very fraught topic, but almost everybody in America agrees that you always tip on almost everything because the minimum wage is so low. But people ask me about here, is it the same in Russia? What's the cultural differences about tipping? And if I was to visit Moscow, if I was to visit Russia, what sort of etiquette would I be expected to follow before tipping? So in this video, I'm going to tackle that problem. So today I'm sat in Park Zaryadye. You can see behind me the Kremlin is over here. This park was opened in September 2017. It was only my second month living here in Moscow, and it was open to a lot of fanfare, but within a few days all the flowers had been stolen, it had been vandalized, the opening didn't go exactly how planned, and within only a couple of days there were police around the whole thing, stopping people from coming in, checking bags, lots of security. Nowadays it's not like that. This was really a main focal point of Moscow's preparation for the World Cup, having a great park in the center of the city right next to the Kremlin, and it all went pretty well in the summer, but as you can see now it's kind of fallen into disrepair already. So I'm going to walk around this park and show you the nice bits and maybe the not so nice bits, and go over this topic of tipping culture which so many of you are curious about. I want to point out some of the good and the bad things about this park I have from actual where I'm sitting right here. So you can see behind me there's some beautiful structures, there's some beautiful like a restaurant and a half bridge which goes over the river, and very nice green grass. But if you're over here you can see the grass is basically yellow, and over here there's some electrical wiring and piping sticking out here, and over here where you can see there's some brand new metal scaffolding, you can see at the bottom they have wires, electrical wires. So there's a very big variation in good and bad in this park. So before I start this topic in earnest, let me give you a little quick summary. The tipping culture here is nowhere near as strong as in the US. Tipping does exist, but there's not a whole list of socially, cultural, accepted norms which you have in the US and in some certain other Western countries. So before we begin, I just wanted you to know that. And now let's get into my 6 tips about tipping in Russia. So while we're walking around this park, I'll give my 6 tips about tipping here in Russia. Number 1, tips are common and expected in cafes and restaurants where there is a waiter and table service. This means you wouldn't tip for a takeaway meal, and you wouldn't tip in McDonald's or Starbucks, but you would tip anywhere where someone comes to serve you while you sit. Number 2, unlike in the USA, tipping here is generally a reward for good service, and you wouldn't tip if service was particularly bad. In general, my rule is not to tip for bad service, tip a bit for okay service, and give a reasonably sized tip for good service. I think this is an accepted custom here. For example, if a meal is 900 rubles, you could give 1,000 note for reasonable service and maybe add an extra 100 or 200 for great service. Number 3. Tips are sometimes put straight in the pocket of the waiter, but are more commonly shared with all the staff, including the chefs and other people who don't interact directly with customers. Maybe you should bear this in mind if you have a poor waiter, but everybody else did a great job. Number 4. Tips are done only with cash. This is my biggest issue here, as I very rarely have cash on me and almost always buy stuff with card. So you should be aware that you can't put a tip on a card. Number 5. The tipping process is similar here to almost all other countries. You ask for a bill, then you put your money in whatever container they provide with the bill. The waiter will then return the change in the same container, and you can choose to take some of it back,
keep it the same, or add more for a tip. It's that easy. Number 6. Where do you not need to tip? Well, almost everywhere else. You need not tip in a hotel, but maybe you'd like to tip the maid if your room is done particularly nicely. You may not need to tip a taxi driver, especially as many work for themselves, but if they were driving to a certain standard, maybe you'd like to do that too. Apps like Yandex and Uber offer a tip page after every ride is complete. I always tip drivers if they don't speak to me for the whole ride. So overall, to summarise, don't worry too much about it. Tip if service is good, don't tip if service is bad. Aim at around 5 to 10% of the overall bill, and nobody will think that that's low at all. This is not the USA. Guys, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it entertaining and informative, and you enjoyed the walk around Park Zayadia. If you enjoyed it, I highly encourage you to give me a like and to subscribe to my channel to see more videos about Moscow and Russia as a whole. Thank you and goodbye.